So welcome everybody. My name's Kirsty Hammonds. I'm a social worker within the Activity Days team in Coreham. So this is a really new service. I am joined here with a couple of my colleagues. So we've got Catherine, who's from Be My Family. We've got Kim, who's our business administrator as well. So we are a small team. And as I say, we usually run the Activity Days. But what we really started thinking about was this need really for sibling contact sessions and wanting to kind of diversify what we do, use the skills we already have and the contacts that we already have, and look at something new and different for local authorities. As I say, this is a completely new service. We've tried to cover everything in this presentation and in our preparation, thinking around kind of this new service, but we are really open to ideas and suggestions from yourselves. So there will be an opportunity at the end, obviously, to give us any feedback, ask us any questions, because obviously the main thing is we want to make sure it's right for the children who we're going to be holding these sessions for. These sessions are going to be called Sibling Time Activity Days, obviously based on Adoption Activity Days and the Fostering Activity Days that we already do. And yeah, I'll talk a little bit later on about why we decided to come up with the name. So what we are looking to cover within this session is sibling contact, the importance of it, the benefits and the outcomes, managing concerns and addressing risk, sibling time activity days, the need for these and the scope, what the referral process and the next steps are, and then, as I said before, an opportunity at the end for questions and answers as well. So the importance of sibling contact. As we all know, sibling networks can be very large and complex. And I know when I was a family finder, I've worked with sibling groups of 7, 8, 9 children, and it can be really difficult trying to manage all of their individual needs. Obviously, they're all living in different areas, different households, you know, with different adults, lots of different personalities and lots of mixes. So it's really can be very complex to manage. As we said, siblings may be living in different households, which may include birth parents, adoptive families, kinship, fostering, residential, or even independently. The loss of sibling relationships is very widespread, particularly for paternal siblings. And we know that generally children want to see their siblings and know they are safe and well. And also a lot of children don't even know they have siblings. And it's so crucial and important that children who are in the care system have a really clear family tree and they know who is in their network of family, and that there are no surprises that come up in their life. And if the information is available, that we're obviously making sure children know who their siblings are and roughly obviously whereabouts they live and anything we can share with them about the other children. So relationships with siblings may have provided comfort and support for children when home circumstances within the birth family were difficult. Maintaining these relationships can provide a source of continuity for adopted children, and it can also help mitigate some of the loss they've experienced. Even when a child is separated from siblings, sibling contact can really help provide them links to the birth family. It can provide children with a sense of belonging and a shared history and a chance to identify biological connection and likeness. It is so crucial, as we say, like for around their self-identity, you know, their self-worth, who they are, to have them links and them connections with that birth family. Siblings can really continue to be a source of support to one another in adult life as well. And for many of us, the sibling relationships are the most enduring close relationships we will ever have. Children and young people who are not able to see siblings may be unhappy about this, and some may seek to reconnect using social media. This could obviously expose them to risk, and including unsolicited communication with members of the birth family with whom contact is not recommended. So we want to try and preempt that, as we say, and try and, you know, help and support and maintain them relationships with these children throughout their childhood. So they obviously don't need to go on and to do this later in their lives. Evidence suggests that in most cases, sibling contact is wanted by the children and can be rewarding and beneficial. Therefore, sibling contact should generally be considered, promoted and supported, at least with the key siblings, unless there is a good reason for it not to occur. The further benefits of sibling contact obviously can help children to manage the feelings of loss and separation. It can help them gain a greater understanding of why they no longer live with their birth family, along with ongoing life story work. And evidence shows that well-facilitated contact is associated with positive well-being outcomes for children and young people, both in the short and long term. There really are generally high levels of satisfaction when it comes to face-to-face sibling contact, and contact with siblings is seen by children and adopters as less complicated and more positive than contact with birth parents. Having strong bonds between the respective parents and carers can really help in maintaining the contact and it being a positive experience for the siblings involved. We all know that obviously adult emotions can really get passed on to children. So it's really important that the adopters, the carers, residential workers go into any contact session with a really positive mindset so that the children obviously pick up on this and that they also go in with really positive. And it can also help, obviously, if all the different caregivers have that relationship established with one another, because obviously that helps a great deal in maintaining the contact going forward as well. So some forms of sibling contact can be problematic and negative when pre-existing problems in the sibling relationships have not been addressed. Siblings who have experienced trauma within the birth family may respond negatively to one another. The way siblings interact with and view each other may be influenced by this, including blaming one another for no longer living with the birth family and/or separation. And it is really important to identify such issues in advance to try and support the children and to consider other forms of contact where appropriate. Can I just check, Catherine, is everybody in? Has everyone been added? I just keep seeing it popping up. Yeah.
I'm on mute now. Sorry, yeah, people are still coming in, but yes, I'm admitting them as they come in.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Yeah, so welcome to anyone who has just joined, and I will be sharing the slides after, so if you have missed out on some of the beginning bit, you will get them. So looking at managing the concerns, so sibling contact may bring feelings of sadness and loss to the service, as visits involve parting from siblings again. This does, however, provide an opportunity for the loss to be acknowledged and for children to be comforted by their adoptive parents and/or carers. Stopping contact will not stop the child from experiencing reminders of past trauma. Instead, we need to acknowledge these feelings. We need to manage them and not suppress and avoid them. And I have heard this said a lot, even when I was back being a family finder, these reasons were often being used for stopping sibling contact. And as I say, it needs to be looked at much deeper than that, really. And we need to be seeing what we can do to help these children with these feelings and these emotions to try and make sure that we can in some way and somehow, continue these established relationships. We also have the concern of siblings passing on information about birth family and birth parents during contact. This exchange of information can be helpful. For an example, an older sibling reassuring a younger sibling that adoption was the right decision, or passing on valued news about other family members as well. However, sibling conversations may also create tensions or pose risks. Obviously, for example, a sibling tells a birth parent obviously where an adopted child lives. Siblings may have different views about parents and/or their adoption. This can be difficult for some children to manage, but sometimes these different views can provide a really good opportunity for adoptive parents or carers to talk to their child about their family situation. Arranging contact between larger sibling groups can pose lots of practical challenges as well. For example, obviously contacting all the families that are involved, finding a suitable date that everyone can make, finding a location that works for all, and obviously activities that are suitable for all the different children attending and all their different ages, different needs. Meetings may also be complicated, as I say, by the varying ages of the children and their different views as well on their birth parents and their family backgrounds. It's really important that we do address the risk when we're looking at anything and when we're working with children. And obviously with sibling contact, there is obviously a level of risk that we have to manage. Some of the risk factors do include, so obviously where there is a history of abuse between siblings, we have to really consider how children can be helped to feel safe during the contact. This might include openly discussing rules and boundaries with the children before the visit, and being clear about how these will be maintained and/or using a specialist setting to facilitate the meeting. It is neither reasonable nor realistic to expect children to keep secrets or not to talk to each other. Adopters and carers should be encouraged to create a climate of openness and honesty so they can talk through with their children any worries they have after talking with their siblings and also before. Adults talking openly with the children can help them make sense of issues and learn important general life lessons, in maintaining privacy and keeping safe. Now, we have created a couple of workbooks that can be sent out to anybody who does refer any children and young people to the service. And it does kind of look at what to expect on the day, who's going to be attending. But we did put a little page in as well about, things we can talk about and things that we can't talk about. And we put that in just as basically a conversation starter. So these conversations, like here, can be had with the children. So, and it's really, just as it says here, it's a really important life lesson about children learning really what is safe and what is not safe to talk about to people, and what information obviously should be kept private for them. So some other issues as well, siblings, sometimes sibling contact may reveal children's feelings of sadness and loss. However, contact, this is temporarily upsetting, should not necessarily be stopped. Contact can help communication around adoption, around children's care history. It can allow a child's difficult feelings and memories to be expressed and talked about, aiding their coping with the grief. It is really important, however, though, that we must remember preparing the child for contact is essential. They must be told who they are meeting, where and when, and what will happen after. And again, this is all covered in the workbook that we provide. We've got information obviously about where the venue, what the venue will look like, photographs of the venue, what the different activities will be, an opportunity for them to, explore their thoughts and feelings around the contact as well. Parents and carers must also be well prepared and supportive of the contact. They need to understand the importance of it and the overall benefits to the child. They need to recognise their role in supporting the child before and after the contact as well. Children need to have a debrief after contact session, an opportunity to explore their feelings, anything that may have come up during the session. Maybe exciting news that they want to share, or they may feel a little bit sad as well. And they should have an opportunity to be able to talk through all their feelings, as I say, after the session. Contact must be facilitated well and take place in a safe environment with activities that are obviously suitable for all the children within the sibling group. So why is sibling time needed? Now, some of you may have watched the documentary that Ashley John Baptiste did about split up in care life without siblings. But if you haven't, I do recommend watching it. It's a really, really kind of thought-provoking documentary. And I just want to share with you now just a short clip from that, just to highlight kind of the need for this service.
I can't even remember the first foster home I lived in because I was so young.
I went into care at the age of 2 and I didn't leave until I was 18. I've always been unclear about whether I was considered for adoption and never had the courage to ask about it as a kid.
It's really hard to describe what it felt like being shunted between 5 different homes before the age of 18. It felt like being under a cloud of rejection. Like no sense of family, no sense of belonging. Check what happens in my mid to late 20s, as I'm still coming to terms with my own childhood. I get a message from a man on Facebook who tells me that he's my brother. It was completely crazy because for a long time, I thought that I was kind of isolated in terms of family, that I didn't have anyone. Like, shit, I've got a brother. Like, it's life-changing.
So that documentary is available on BBC iPlayer, and as I say, I do recommend watching it, to anybody who hasn't. And it just really highlights, obviously, the need for the service, the need for obviously talking to children and making sure children have as much information as they can. We don't want this pattern to keep repeating for our children, and it is really crucial that we do what we can to ensure that children develop and maintain relationships with their siblings. So why is sibling time needed? Now, more than 12,000 children in care and not living with at least one of their siblings. And now that is a massive number of children. The Freedom of Information request sent to more than 200 UK local authorities reveal that more than half of sibling groups in care are split up. Now, we know that this, there is obviously many reasons why children are split up, and, it can happen for various reasons. And I'm sure this, it's obviously an issue that is going to continue to happen for different reasons. I mean, it's always an impossibility to keep every child together. Obviously, some children remain in foster care, some are adopted, and there are, very large sibling groups as well. But obviously, the thing that we can change is that contact and that relationship between the siblings when they are split up. The number of children in care is rising, and in England alone, there are more than 78,000 children, which is an increase of 28% in the last decade. In a recent survey, 22% of 8 to 10-year-olds and 31% of 11 to 18-year-olds felt they saw their siblings too little. Children reported they did not want contact in drab contact centres and wanted to be able to do normal activities with their siblings. The Children's Commissioner in January of this year has stated she would like to see legal protection for sibling relationships to be maintained, as has been introduced in Scotland in July last year. Overall, there is a really strong recognition of the importance of sibling relationships, and these relationships are a factor that in both child and adoption law proceedings, courts can and should take into account when determining a child's best interest. So in the Children Act 1989, it says where reasonably practical, accommodate looked after siblings together. Before making a care order, consider contact arrangements, and the courts have the power to make contact orders between siblings. Within the Adoption and Children Act 2002, it states, in coming to a decision, take into account the likely effect on the child of ceasing to be a member of the birth family and the relationships the child has with relatives, including the likelihood of relationships continuing and the value to the child of doing so. Consider contact arrangements, including existing and proposed arrangements, and the courts have powers to make contact orders between siblings at the point of a placement order, adoption order, or afterwards. Now, in July last year, the 26th of July last year, the law changed on what councils and the children's hearing systems must do helping siblings in Scotland. Now, councils and the children's hearing systems must now help care-experienced siblings to have contact with each other. This applies to siblings with the same parent, children and young people who have lived together like siblings, and children and young people who consider each other as siblings. These changes to the law mean if sibling contact does not happen, that siblings then and their advocates can challenge this. Relationships shouldn't be affected by budgets, and obviously local authorities must have the financial resources they need to make sure care-experienced children can exercise their rights to family life. Now, I know that this was also debated in Parliament earlier on this year, so hopefully there is kind of talk and movement within the England and Welsh law as well, you know, to move into hopefully something similar to what Scotland have introduced. Although these legal frameworks allow for concerns about sibling relationships to be expressed, these are often outweighed by other factors, obviously assumptions about placement stability, and adoption is still commonly perceived as closed as well. So the United Nations General Assembly stated that siblings with existing bonds should in principle not be separated by placements in alternative care unless there is a risk of abuse or justification in the best interest of the child. In any case, every effort should be made to enable siblings to maintain contact with each other unless this is against their wishes and feelings. So we did a questionnaire. Some of you may have filled this out. It did get sent to a lot of different individuals within local authorities. Out of the 12 respondents out of the 33 that we had a fairly negative view on how their local authority coordinates and supports sibling contact currently. Words such as poor, under-resourced and not prioritised were used. Respondents had various beliefs about the extent to which their local authority prioritised sibling contact, and 33% believed that sibling contact is a high priority, which is really reassuring for us to know that, you know, people do see it as really valued and really important. So 40% believed it was a medium priority, and then 12 low and 15 were unsure. We also asked questions about obviously what, you know, we feel should be involved in the days. And out of 29 respondents believed that creative therapies, drama, photographs, handprinting were appropriate activities, and respondents were overwhelmingly supportive of this idea. One respondent highlighted the importance of professional therapists. Another believed that the day should be fun and that the activity should not feel like work, which hopefully nothing we do in any of our events do feel like work. We always try and put fun kind of at the centre of everything, really. On whether it is appropriate to provide adults with mini training such as life story sessions, 82% of the respondents believed it would be appropriate, and obviously with a lesser number feeling not appropriate or unsure. So coming to what are sibling time activity days? Well, we all know contact, it's a widely used term, however it does sound a little bit cold, but because we all know what it means, obviously it's still very commonly used across the sector. But it doesn't really reflect the children's most valued relationships and the importance of maintaining them. Therefore, we came up with sibling time, which we felt emphasises the importance of children spending quality time together, making memories, having fun and building relationships. The sibling time sessions will bring together multiple sibling groups together for one session lasting around 3 hours. These sessions will be facilitated by social workers, play leaders and a trained therapist. So on the actual day itself, now this is based on our first event, which is being held in August. Now, because we are a pilot, we want to kind of keep changing things and adapting as we go along, really. So this is kind of generally for our first session, then we'll review after every session we hold to see what we could do differently, you know, what maybe would work best for the different children we've got referred for the next session. So as I say, this is kind of what we're looking at for the session to be held at in August. So the children would arrive at 11 o'clock. They would have free play until 12:30. Now the play would include circus skills, magician, den building, water rockets, arts and crafts and sports activities. However, we will review each child's referral form and make sure that we have suitable, you know, activities that, you know, for all of the children that are attending the session, for all the different age groups and their needs as well. We'll have a lunch break at 12:30 to 1 o'clock where all the children can obviously sit together within their sibling groups and have lunch together. And then we would be looking at a group activities led by creative therapies. We also thought of the possibility that creative therapies might do some short sessions with each sibling group that's in attendance during the 3 hours as well. But we're just confirming the, you know, the finer details of that. The session then would end at 2 o'clock. During the session, we'll be taking photographs of the sibling groups together. Obviously, these pictures will be shared with the children, their carers, adopters, social workers, for their life story work, and obviously, you know, more importantly, is a record for them to take away from the day. The event will be facilitated by social workers, as I said, play workers and a therapist as well will be present throughout the event and obviously overseeing all of the activities and the children at all times. Each child will have a short report written about them and about the session, you know, obviously any feedback that we can provide and how the session and the contact went for them. Parents and carers will be expected to remain on site during the session, but we will ask them to be in a separate area where refreshments will be provided. This will just allow the children to be completely free, you know, and allow them that time, quality time with their siblings. At some of our sessions, we will be looking at holding light bite training for the adopters and carers during as well, so that they can really gain something from the day as well. So the cost of the session currently is £150 per child. So that's for the 3 hour session and all of the different elements that we've included. And that would include obviously the light bite training as well for the carers and adopters with the session that's included on. So the referral process and the next steps. So our first session is taking place on the 16th of August. It currently is likely to be held in London. However, this will be finalised based on the needs of the children that are referred for this event. A referral form needs to be completed for each child, and I can send that out to everybody who's attended today. Now, it's really important that these are completed thoroughly, because obviously we need to make sure that we've got all of the needs of the children so we can obviously preempt any situations that may arise. We can support every child as best we can. We will be looking at around 15 to 20 children at the sessions. It may be less than that, though. It's kind of very new, as I say, and if that works well, then we would continue. If we felt it needed to be less for the next one, or we feel we could have more, then, as I say, we're very open to adapting and changing as we go along. An invite letter will obviously be sent to the child, parent and carer with all of the relevant information leading up to the event as well. So now is your opportunity for questions and answers. So Angie, is it Angina? I think you've got your hand up.
Hi, Angina, yeah. You mentioned that the parents and carers would need to remain on site in a different room. So if there's a mixture of adoptive parents and birth parents, will they be separated in any way?
Yes, so if it was birth parents that facilitating the contact, yes, we could provide different spaces for different people. Any site that we use would be quite a large space, so it'd be very easily to to be able to facilitate that and have safe spaces for everybody that's in attendance. Yeah, Jane.
Hi, yeah, I just wondered whether there could be ASF funding for this. Given that I think somebody's put in the chat, what about children who are adopted and there may not be any social worker involved? And whether and I'm just also thinking about families, if it's multiple children, they may be coming from quite different social situations and just affordability of all of this.
Yeah, definitely. So was that the Adoption Support Fund? Yeah, so we have looked into that, and I think because of the therapeutic side of it, it was maybe a possibility. However, because it's not a regular like a weekly session or a monthly session, it doesn't seem to fall under the ASF funding currently. However, if these sessions became more established and they were every month, then there may be a possibility. But if I'm right in thinking that was what Kevin fed back to us, wasn't it, Catherine? That currently, I think he went to the DFE, didn't he, as well, and discussed it. It currently doesn't fall under ASF funding, unfortunately.
Sorry, it's another question. I'm just interested in that if it's different groups of siblings who are meeting, just I don't know, just what your thinking has been about how that works, because obviously they're all going to be playing with each other at various times, and if these are children who have not seen their siblings for quite a long time, I'm just wondering your thinking around all of that and managing that so that they know who their sibling group is.
Yeah, sure.
So I think they're not spending all the time with other children.
Yeah, I mean, we want it to be a fun session, and we want it to be as fun as possible. But at the beginning, obviously, each sibling group would be brought together. For one, there'd be plenty of us kind of social workers and, as I say, play leaders, able to kind of be responsible for each sibling group. So there'd be one of us kind of for each sibling group. We would ensure that they all meet, they come together at the beginning of the session, and then we could encourage them. We'll have different planned activities. So there'd be arts and crafts. We could go and do a game of football. It would be about us kind of encouraging them to go around and move around the different activities together. There will be time where they run off and they want to play with other children, but we will, try our best as facilitators to keep bringing the children back together. And like at lunchtime, for example, we'd encourage the sibling group to sit together. We'd have a table for them to come together and eat their lunch together. And as I said, there's creative therapies as well that are going to be involved, and they would be looking at doing sessions with each of the sibling groups together, whether it's like music therapy or a session like art therapy. So she would do a little mini session with each of the sibling groups as well. So it would be a bit of a mixture, but we will be there and on hand to facilitate and ensure that each sibling group has quality time together. Catherine, did you just want to go through some of the questions that are in the chat box?
I will. If I ask you the question and then so Jacqueline says, who would pay the fee if a child has already been adopted, so no social worker involved?
Yes, I mean, I guess that could, as part of the support plan, it could go back to the local authority they were placed in, or obviously currently living with, if they're under any adoption support arrangements, or obviously the family themselves, which I know is obviously difficult. I mean, if we could get funding for this service, completely, we would absolutely love that and have nobody charge. But unfortunately, that's not the world we live in. So I know that the funding side of it is a difficult aspect, but yeah, it would probably fall on the local authority, as I say, either that the child's from or where they're living, if it's 3 years post-adoption order.
Yeah. Okay. Tracy asks, what support and guidance to the foster carers who will be in a room together exchanging information?
Yep, so we would look at having somebody present within that space as well, or at least if they were able to be in there the whole time, making sure that someone is kind of popping in and out. I mean, not everybody would need to stay. They could go off and have a walk and get a coffee, as long as there is one adult for each kind of child that's in attendance. Just in case anything happened, we want to make sure that there's a safe person on site for that child, in case they do get dysregulated, they feel a bit emotional, they have an accident and obviously want their parent or caregiver. So it's really important that they are available and on hand for the children during the session. But as I say, we could provide different spaces for different, different parents. If there are complex relationships between the adults, obviously that is something we can manage, and that information would just need to be popped in the referral form so that we're aware of that as well. Next question, Catherine.
Yep. So Ellie Smith asks how often we envisage these events occurring.
Yeah, so at the minute, the plan is we've got 3 sessions planned. So it's August, then it's October half term, and then February half term. And then obviously with it being a pilot, we would then obviously evaluate how that's gone and review it, and then look to obviously launch the service properly after that. And at that point, we would then know whether or not we can do these sessions more frequently, whether or not there are set sibling groups that, want to attend every session, whether or not we hold them in different locations across the country. Obviously, all of that information will be kind of sought during the pilot of these 3 sessions that we're planning on doing now.
And Ellie Breen asks, do siblings need to have met each other previously?
I think obviously it's helpful if they have that initial relationship, but if this is an opportunity to bring siblings together that haven't met before, then that's absolutely fine. This, service and session can be used in whatever way is best for the children, and obviously it's a service that's available to local authorities. So if it's an opportunity for children to meet the first time, as long as, again, we have that information and we know how best we can facilitate and support that, then that's absolutely fine.
I just put my hand up because I couldn't put my question in the chat. I was just wondering about the thinking around not having the parents present and having the children separately, and thinking about how that might be for the parents. Would there be an opportunity of time for them to meet the siblings as well? Because if the children are coming home and talking about them and they haven't had that time with them, so I wondered what thinking had gone into arranging it in that way.
Again, as I say, we're kind of open to ideas, and obviously you're, I'm sure, experts as well. I mean, I've done sibling contact myself, and we have talked to people, but we are very open to trying different models. So this was the model that we were going to try for the first session to see how it went. Now, obviously the adults would be bringing the children into the session, so I would hope that there is an opportunity and picking them up at the end. So at the end of the session, they would obviously meet all of the siblings when they are collecting the children. However, that would need to be carefully managed as well if, there, as I said before, if there's complex relationships between the adults, if we've got birth parents where there may be some complex relationships. So we would need to manage that best on, each individual kind of circumstances. The thought was really there about sometimes adults' emotions can be quite complicated. And we just wanted the children to be able to be fully free and not feel any loyalties to any adults during this session, really. And just to be able to completely commit and prioritise spending the time with their siblings that they don't have the opportunity normally to spend time with, and just be able to be free to do that. So that was the thinking really around it for this session. But I completely get the point. Obviously, it's really important that, obviously all the adopters, carers do meet all of the sibling groups within that. So I think it would be good to have that opportunity at the end if it's safe to do so. And as I say, for the next session, we may try it differently where all the adults are involved. It's trial and error, really, to make sure we're getting it right for the children.
Thank you. It's tricky, isn't it? And it depends on very much the different sibling group. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Tracy asks what preparation guidance is on offer for carers, birth parents, children, etc.
Well, we haven't actually developed a guidance for the adopters and carers. So that is something, actually, that's a really good point. That's why this session is so useful for us as well. I think that's probably something we need to look at writing up. So that is definitely something we can take away from this. Because obviously, other than the guidance they would get from, obviously, local authorities, social workers, and things like that, who obviously are instigating this referral, we haven't created anything separate. So I think that is definitely something we could do.
And Gina's just asking for confirmation that the sessions are £150 per child. So,
yes, that is correct. Yeah.
Emily asks, is there a commitment that siblings could have facilitated contact 3 times a year, which could be included in support plans and dates agreed in advance?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, we've got these 3 dates planned. We haven't got the specific date, but it definitely is going to be August, October and February. And obviously moving forward, we would really hope that it is something that, you know, people can commit to and that we can host on a regular basis. Then it would be able to 100% be included in support plans. And we could obviously come up with dates that are suitable, you know, standard dates spread out across the year that obviously would hopefully would be, you know, available, suitable for other children as well. We've looked at school holidays just because we thought obviously it's better than trying to cram things in on a weekend when you've got busy school life Monday to Friday as well. Often children have clubs and things they go to on a weekend, where school holidays for the children does generally is a little bit freer, which is why we've kind of dedicated this to school holidays at present. And
Tracy asks if we can elaborate more on the therapeutic support, please.
Yeah, so we've had a short meeting with creative therapist team within Coram, and one of their creative therapists who mainly does music therapy, she felt was probably going to be the best suited for these kind of sessions. Is very happy, obviously, to be in attendance during the session and do facilitated group work. We haven't got all the finer details. After that meeting, they were going off to kind of look at what they felt would be best. We kind of give them all of the information from our point of view in terms of what the session's going to look like. Then they were going away to really plan what would best meet the needs of our service. So we're just waiting to hear back from them, the specifics around that. But it is creative therapies, it's music therapy. I think it was music therapy, wasn't it?
It was music, yeah.
Yeah. And it may be that we look at art therapy, you know, different ones, other sessions, but it is from the creative therapist team.
And Jane asks, are there activities for the carers while they're waiting? So the light bite.
Yeah, so we were looking at the light bite training sessions. Obviously refreshments will be provided, and obviously people can go for a walk and get some fresh air as well. I think it's a really good opportunity there for, you know, for them to obviously have a break, but to obviously speak with the other adopters and carers, just, you know, learn from each other, have that opportunity to, you know, network with one another. And obviously if they are parents and carers of the same sibling group, then that's really valuable, you know, chance for them really to share information and build that relationship with one another as well.
Barry asks, will there be a chance to debrief people in the caring role a period of time after the contact to consider what concerns, positives would be raised after the event?
Yeah, so this would all be included in that report that is then shared. And so obviously that would be shared with the key person, whether it be, obviously if it's just adopters that are, you know, referring these children and it's coming just from them, there's no local authority involvement, then that report obviously would be shared back to them. If it is coming from local authority, that report would be then shared with the local authority and they would then be able to pass on the information within that. But all of them, you know, anything we noticed, any concerns, any positives, all of that would be highlighted in that report that we would do for every child who's in attendance.
Nicola, how many sibling groups will be in each session? So that's, we've sort of talked about that a bit, haven't we?
Yeah, because it would vary depending on how many. We don't want the session to be too big. So as I say, we would only be looking at 15 to 20 children maximum for this first one. So as I say, if we've got a sibling group of 9, 10, then that wouldn't leave, you know, we may only end up with 2 sibling groups for this first session. So yeah, we want to obviously, we don't want to jump in too heavy first. We want to make sure we're getting it right before we obviously make it bigger, the event as well. So yeah, that's the numbers we'll be looking at for this first one.
And Amanda asks about this contact setup activities, and has it been trialled with any sibling groups before?
No, it hasn't. Obviously for this one we're using the principles of kind of similar activities that we do at the activity days, which we do have obviously siblings attending that. Some of the times it is siblings that don't live together, so in theory it's probably used as a sibling contact session. But we are using activities that we know that go down very well with the children who attend adoption activity days and who've attended our activity days for fostering, which is obviously more teenagers. So we're kind of basing it on them principles, as I say, because we know it does work well for this cohort of children.
And Tracy asks, so children and adults have different and often competing narratives about adoption journeys. In information sharing, networking, how would this be managed?
I feel like we have covered that in some of the discussions that we may have just had.
Yeah.
I don't think we can ever 100% manage, you know, any conversation, but it is about that preparation work beforehand. you know, really people knowing, and I think this will definitely obviously go in the guidance that has obviously been raised for the carers and adopters about what is helpful, what are helpful discussions to be had, what are maybe not so helpful discussions, and obviously that talking to their child and young person prior to an event about, you know, just keeping themselves safe, you know, what things we should keep private, what things are absolutely fine to talk about, what we should be sharing with people that we don't see every day, you know. And it's about having them open conversations and that narrative with the children, and obviously making sure the adults are aware of that as well when it comes to their conversations too. And as I said before, any adults that there may be complexities between, we would try, you know, we would make sure that there are spaces, safe spaces available for everybody during these sessions.
That's all the questions currently in the chat.
Yeah. So anybody else got anything they want to just raise your hand, or just feel free to speak? That's absolutely fine.
Can I say something? It's
yes.
Hiya, I'm a social worker with children's permanence team. So I can see the idea. I've been to your activity days as well for children, family finding as well, did the last recent one. So I know the idea of the concept that you use, and I can see it working with children who may be in a sibling group where some have got a plan of long-term foster care and some have got a plan of adoption. So I can see that, and I can see that it maybe being easier to get funding for the children that are still looked after in foster care and the child moving forward to an adoptive plan.
Yeah.
So I can see that working, because that's some of the complexities, isn't it, when we've got children who've got different care plans, adoption and fostering. So I can definitely see that being really beneficial. I think the thing that I would find harder is bringing in the birth parents, because if a birth parent thought their birth child was in a room having contact with a child that they were bringing, I think that would be really difficult to manage. I think for an adopter it'd be difficult to manage, and I think it'd be difficult to manage for a birth parent as well, really. That's just my personal view about that, but I can definitely see it being really beneficial for children in foster care and children adopted, because that's a real dilemma that we face when we look at children's plans, especially when we've got larger sibling groups and there's some older children, and then we've got younger children, considering that we don't want them to remain in foster care for the next, say, 13 years, but there's a number of older children, and obviously those older children lose that sibling through the adoption process. So I can definitely think that would be a really beneficial and a way round to keep children's privacy, but that I think is really a really good idea. Yeah, that's just my view.
Yeah, just to kind of follow on from that, I do think the service is probably more likely to be used by children that are in adoption or foster care. However, I don't ever want to put any blanket rules, because every individual circumstance is different. You know, and some children may be living with birth parents, and they may actually then birth parents, you know, I've heard obviously really positive stories that there are birth parents out there that do have really positive relationships with adoptive parents as well. And obviously in them situations, they'll probably be facilitating contacts themselves, but it doesn't mean to say positive relationships can't be established. And as I say, I wouldn't want to put a blanket rule out there saying that, you know, this is not an event for children who are living with birth parents. But fundamentally, we have to make sure it's safe and it's right, and that it's not, you know, causing any further challenges or difficulties with these children that you know, they don't need extra, really. So it's about looking at everything on an individual case-by-case basis, really, and making sure that we can facilitate this in a safe way that is positive for everybody who's in attendance. But as I say, I don't want to sit here and say it's 100% not for this cohort of children, or it is for this, because it is about looking at everything really individually. So thank you for that as well. But anybody else got any thoughts or feelings on the service and the idea?
Kirsty, could I just ask, is there a lower age range? You know, so no. Babies. No, I was just thinking if there were babies.
Yeah.
Who then look after the babies?
Yeah, so I have replied. I think somebody emailed me about this, and I did say that if it was a very young baby, I do think in that situation the parent or carer would need to be there. Obviously, you know, I'm fully qualified to look after babies. Yeah, I've done all my nursery nursing, but I do think in that situation, a baby, you know, is probably obviously best cared for by their adoptive parent or, you know, carer. So it may be that in them situations they do, you know, they may want to pop out, and I'm sure between, you know, we would be very capable of looking after that child for a very short space of time. But I do think they would need to be kind of there to facilitate and help support that child during the session. As I say, that's why it's kind of no blanket rule really for anything. We are kind of open And as I say, we will always make decisions based on individual needs, really.
So Marie's asking, when a child sibling group has been referred and attended an event, what happens re future contact after that? Is this just a one-off situation? Obviously, we have talked a little bit about that, but
yeah, as I say, there would be more than, we'd be more than open to having them referred for each of the 3 sessions that we've got established. As we move on into early next year, it might be that we are able to start planning the Easter, the next kind of events moving forward as well. But we just need to get this first event really kind of completed, so we know, as I say, we know whether or not it is something that is definitely going to work. We know what we're doing. We know that, this, how we can plan these events going into the future as well before we commit to doing too many. We don't want to, we want to make sure we're getting it 100% right first is our priority, really. Yeah.
And Vicky asks if a sibling can attend when they're 18 plus, if they've got a younger sibling whom they've previously seen through the service.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, that would be, we could facilitate that through the session as well. That would be no problem. So thank you all so much for joining, and hopefully we'll see some of you again in the future.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.